everyone here. Stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public input.
My name is David Pearl, 79 Main Street, Cookson, New Hampshire. Commissioner Gagnon and Commissioner Roy, I've had some time to review the minutes, audio tapes, and or the videos in recent meetings. I would expect that you can now clearly answer my question. Did the Police Commission discuss the letters sent to the Town Council dated May 27th and June 2nd concerning Police Commission candidates at the May 19th Police Commission meeting?
Mr. Pearl, this is a generic letter, and there was no meeting required. This letter was instituted by Chief Oliver over 10 years ago. All we simply did is took Mr. Patty's name and Mr. Carolian's name. It was in a word processor, and that was dated May 27th. We signed it individually at different times. Subsequent to that May 27th letter, Stephen LaRue applied for the open position. We told Francine the same thing. It's in a word processor. Insert Mr. LaRue's name and send it on. We came up here individually. I can't remember what day. Obviously, it was subsequent to June 2nd. Signed it, and it got mailed to the Town Council.
Well, Chief, perhaps you can shed a little light on this, because at the June meeting, you said that you stamped that confidential because it was discussed in non-public session. We had a discussion about whether it was viable to discuss in non-public session, and Commissioner Gagnon agreed that it was discussed in non-public session.
The first two were discussed in non-public. The third letter.
Correct. The third didn't come from Town Hall in time for the meeting.
So you signed it individually, outside, and didn't discuss it.
Right. And also the confidentiality really has nothing to do with it, because Councilor Fischer-Tolda chose to read it himself. So it's kind of a moot point whether it was stamped confidential.
I don't see how it could be confidential if you signed it individually anyway, because it wouldn't be part of the non-public session, which I'm glad to hear that it wasn't, because I don't believe that it was part of the non-public session. I would assume that you would discuss these matters in meetings, not have a form letter that's over 10 years old and insert people's names into them. But that's for the commission to decide, I guess.
Well, apparently it was still germane, because out of the three candidates, only one received one vote, and that was Mr. Carolian, I believe. So, obviously, they felt the same way we do, the same way that's been felt for 10 years, over 10 years.
Well, I think, Mr. Roy, that could be argued when there's that many candidates in the field. Of course, there's some decisions to be made, but that's not what I'm here to discuss. I'm glad to hear that that was handled properly. My next question concerns the April 4th meeting that was brought up at the last meeting. This was brought up, and it was explained by Commissioner Gagnon that it was former Commissioner Muscala and Gagnon were just discussing things with the lawyer April 4th before the deliberative session. In that same meeting, I believe it was July, Commissioner Gagnon, you explained that if you and Mr. Roy were to meet, that would constitute a meeting, and you were discussing, I think, Mr. DeFina's review. So I guess my question is, if you and Commissioner Muscala met to discuss things with the lawyer, didn't that constitute a meeting?
No. Anything with the lawyer is a non-meeting. Not subject to be posted or anything else.
So in the July 15th of this year, the AG's office put out an updated right-to-know packet, and it does explain that meetings with attorneys are not, they're not technically meetings.
Even if you have a quorum of commissioners there?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. The other question that I have is, I have written to the commission a month and a half ago asking you for a copy of your policies and procedures, and I've received absolutely no response.
The policy and procedures for running a meeting?
For the police commission's policies and procedures, as far as I'm particularly interested in answering questions and some.
There isn't anything in writing, it's up to the chair, just like any other board.
Well, I guess I'm asking the commission, not the chief. Do you have a policy in place for answering questions and correspondence and answering questions via correspondence and so forth?
No, we do not.
Wasn't that discussed at that last meeting, David, where they would submit something in writing if they had a question?
Right. That's what was asked. Okay. But I would imagine that the meetings are conducted via Robert's rules. That's how, I don't know how this group does, but most of the meetings that are conducted in town are conducted with Robert's rule in mind, but that's a particular...
Well, then I would think that a letter saying that Robert's rules are enforced would be adequate. But I received no response from you, so I have no idea what policy you're running under. I also had a question about the 88 questions that I submitted in April. Have we?
They're almost done.
We've got some work going on that?
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
Unrelated question. It is correct, I believe, that all the Hooksett police cruisers have laptop computers in them?
The mark cards do.
Yes. Are these computers connected to the police station network with the internet?
No, that's the next step in the process.
Is there a reason why we don't have that type of information now?
Why it's not connected now? Yes, because we were waiting for the program which we started back many years ago when Fred Bishop was chairman. We had to get the last of the equipment in, and as you remember from not too many meetings ago, we talked about the last repeater site finally coming online. That had to be done before we could move to the next step. And that next step the next step would be to see about hooking the laptops to the building, and that would have to be a warrant article because of the cost of that.
Well, I certainly would hope that this would be done because when it came to my attention that the condition that our officers were facing, I came to the realization that myself with a cell phone I can gather more information on any person that I might approach in town.
How many police departments you figure have the laptops in their cars?
I don't know.
Not many. So it's
That's not my impression.
They're not facing anything other than what most other departments are doing. It is a long process. It's very costly. And we've done it in pieces to try to keep the cost at least adequate by the year. It's at the last step.
It's been in the planning stages, and it's been that particular step has been planned for years, but we had to wait till the last of the infrastructure was in.
Well, I guess I just feel that some of the expenditures that we have seen are less important than that. I think that that's something in the information age that we should be on top of. Would like to see that finished. Going back to my request to amend the
5
minutes.
minutes.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Laura Willett, 3 Summerfair Street. Related to Dave's questions, I guess now you're saying you have no policies and procedures in place as a commission, but you would not take an unsigned complaint against the chief because you said it was a policy of yours not to accept unsigned complaints. Is that a written policy or not?
It's a department policy, not ours.
It's a department policy? I
I
thought the
believe that's
policy
the
was...
policies of the department.
I think you need to clarify. I think what was said was a non-specific complaint will not be taken. For example, if a citizen walked in here tonight and said, I want to make a complaint against Officer Durkis, and the officer, was mean to me, but won't tell us when, where, and all that, there's nothing to investigate. So that's the difference. So when our policy that you read out there says anonymous complaints, we will take anonymous complaints. It depends on the information given and the seriousness of it. If somebody comes in with a general complaint, you need to have something to look into.
Did you feel the complaint that was presented to you was general?
Yes. It was also the opinion of an attorney that it was general.
Mm-hmm.
It was too big.
Okay. At the last commission meeting, I had asked why there was no record of the minutes for the April 4th meeting, and I was told that it should not have been posted as it was not an official meeting.
That's a Saturday meeting?
That was the Saturday meeting, but instead it was a meeting with your attorney, which I'm assuming was either Bailey or Higgins.
Higgins.
Okay. Now I have a question about a non-public meeting that was posted for Thursday, August 6th at 11:30 a.m. Did this meeting in fact happen?
Which one was that? That was the higher.
No. That one was, that was the one that, when I was away.
It did not happen.
Yeah,
It got
Canceled.
That's correct. There was no meeting.
You were gone.
Right, I had to,
And
called and canceled
I called
last
and
minute.
canceled at the last
Right.
minute. So no, it did not happen.
Okay, but apparently there was one commissioner present,
Correct,
and the commissioner did meet with an employee.
correct.
So is it now going to be common practice that the commissioners will meet with an employee that has resigned? Is this going to be an effort to conduct exit interviews on the part of the commission?
I believe it should be.
Okay. And in the future, will all three commissioners be involved in the process?
Yeah, that was just, I believe you were out of town.
right, when did you tell me, on Tuesday? She notified me on Tuesday, and I told her that I was planning on being out of town, and there was no way that I was going to be able to change my schedule.
The Commissioner of the Passage received legal advice that exit interviews were not a good idea for a number of reasons. So we have not, so we have not, the Commission has not been doing formal exit interviews for quite a while now. The reason that was called was because of a couple of comments that officer made that instead of being a general exit interview, even if he had one in place, it was more specific to the Commission probing what that officer had to say. So it was not meant as a broad, standardized, if you will, what you would consider an exit interview.
So since all three commissioners didn't have the opportunity to meet with that individual, would they be willing to do it at this point?
He was leaving the following day, and that was the only possible day we could meet with him. I was the only one that was available, so we chose to go ahead with
He
the
has
meeting.
stated that he would be willing to meet with all three of you. So I guess it's up to you.
Is he, if I can, he hasn't said that to us, so is he going through you?
That's what I was told. So I'm just wondering if all three commissioners...
That's what you were told, but not by him.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's what I was told. I'm just wondering if the three of you
Well,
would be...
you either were told by him or you weren't. I mean, there is a difference. That's why we're asking. Is he the one who said that's what he would want to do?
Yes.
Right, have him contact me.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, oops, I'm sorry.
J.R. Willett, 3 Summerfair Street. A few questions. Commissioner Roy, looks like an address. I asked a question privately at a public portion of the commission meeting in May. I asked you if you had the opportunity to read Maura's copies that Maura handed you at the last meeting, class commission meeting, in reference to the emails correspondence between Maura and the chief. And you replied by saying you had not. You made a specific and direct claim that Maura released her own press release, and the copy she gave you refuted your claim. The information she gave you, she was seeking your input into the press release. It appears the chief did not think it was important enough to forward it to you. It also indicates the chief did not think your changes were important enough to pass along to Maura as well. Can you please explain why you did not review that information?
Probably because I was in the middle of tax season and I had other pressing things to do.
Have you had the opportunity to read it now?
No.
I find this odd, especially after the strong, you were pretty strong in your comments about that press release, and saying that she released her own press release. I mean, I think you should take the opportunity at any time to take a look at that. Chairman Gagnon, on March 28, 2005, the investigation into the chief concluded that all charges be dismissed except for the complaint regarding performance appraisals and composition of promotion boards. Can you outline and describe what has been developed or modified to correct this investigation finding?
No, not at this point. I'd have to look back.
Can I add something?
2005, I'm sorry, it's just,
Yeah, I know, you were the only one that was on the board at the time.
Yeah, so you're asking me to go back a long way. I'm an old guy here. Doesn't work that good.
For the record, I was clear of that also, and I have documentation of that.
Well, I'm aware
And
of
it was
that.
not, it had nothing to do with promotion, it was about the evaluations, and I produced for the commission at the time paperwork that showed that the commission had approved suspending the evaluation program that was in place when I became chief here because it was not working. So in fact, I was not found ultimately that there was anything wrong there. I was acting at the direction of the commission. Since then, we have done, as we had talked about, an updated and better evaluation form.
Okay, I didn't see anything in writing.
That was previous to me. They suspended it.
Exactly, exactly, and that was presented to the board. Well, you wouldn't say anything in writing because it's part of the personnel file.
Well, the commission then indicated that they were going to work with the chief to bring this department together in a proactive fashion. What proactive changes have been made to resolve the weakness in the system?
You have other people in positions that did not exist back then. We have 2 captains, I believe, that did not exist. John, correct me if I'm wrong. Back then, we have a dedicated lieutenant to patrol. There's been many things, and I don't know what you want from me other than things have been changed, and whether people think it's for the good or not, there has been changes.
I just don't see anything proactive here. That's my opinion. The commission indicated that they were going to meet with different employee groups to make certain progress regarding their important concerns would continue on in a meaningful manner. Was this ever done?
Repeat that again, please.
The commission indicated they were going to meet with different employee groups to make certain progress regarding their important concerns would continue on in a meaningful manner.
I don't remember that statement.
It was in the conclusion, it was in your report. I can get a copy of it for you.
I still don't remember that statement, that the commission made that statement.
So then you didn't meet with any employee groups then?
No,
Okay.
because that would be a violation of the chain of command, which we've been accused of doing back in
And
2005.
why would that state that?
I don't know. I don't have the answer for you.
I'll get a copy of that for you. Take a look at it. I was just wondering if any changes been developed to improve the command staff's failure and the constant department low morale issues.
No,
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Sorry.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Based on my last
Please
experience,
state your name and your address, please.
Tom Luzla, host president. Based on my last meeting here, I figured I'd take the chief's criticisms in regards to not knowing things and so forth and do a little investigation. First thing I'd like to do is, I noticed that going through the minutes on the website, I can only go back to 2002. And I've cleared that. I was hoping to try to get back to 1999 through to 2001.
Copies,
Okay.
paper copies.
Are they held here?
Yeah.
I can provide. So anyways, what I did is I looked at benefits of accreditation and looked at understanding what benefits there were in that. So I went to the CALEA site, called them up, had about an hour conversation. They were very helpful, and they pointed to me to some different departments around the state. So I interviewed 10 different departments and went through and just kind of looked at it from a benchmarking standpoint. And I was very impressed with their national accreditation. I was very impressed with some of the programs and the community outreach programs. So what I've done is I've asked a few of them if they'd be willing to see the police commission here just on a fact-finding mission, looking at what how their departments are transformed with accreditation. and some of the systems that they have in place based on best practices. And one department was highlighted, and I've already discussed with them coming there myself, because I have some questions in regards to some of their programs, and to look a little bit more in depth, and they're very open to it. If anyone here wants to join me, I'd be willing to organize it, and you can go in your own cars and stuff. I won't be transporting it, but I can set it up. The interest here is not to create a situation to draw comparisons, because I think that'd be unfair to the chief, and I think it'd be unfair to the other chief from the other department. But the idea would be to look at their programs and how they've transformed in regards to accreditation.
Fred, were you here during the accreditation process here?
Yes, I was.
So most of our AOMs, John, correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, are based on going through that national accreditation, are they not?
That was correct. It was Chief Oliver and the Lieutenant LaPlante,
Yes.
who became acting chief, were the drivers of that. We had even on-site reviews here. And that was delayed during Chief Oliver's illness and subsequent leave of absence. And then we had a temporary chief in place, and then we had a permanent chief. We hired Steve Grathiotis. The process just went to the back burner, and I don't think ever moved forward.
I can add to that also, if it's okay. Fred will remember when I was hired, you mentioned in a posting which I did read recently about my failure to reach accreditation. Accreditation had failed before I was hired.
I believe that's the case.
Accreditation had failed before I was hired. One of the things that I told the commission, Fred was the chairman, I believe when I was hired, was that accreditation was one of the programs I was going to look back into why it had failed and getting it going again. This department had actually looked at accreditation back in
1994 was when it began.
Even before that, because I was a lieutenant who had looked into it. When we looked at the program in '99, when I came back as chief, what we found were there were many problems with the way the program was put in place. It was not put in place here, and this is nothing the commission was involved in, but it was not put in place. The structure as far as what you found out from CLIA, how you develop the program, that process has not taken place, number one. Number two, a lot of the policies have been stolen from other agencies, which is fine because you don't want to reinvent the wheel, but the policies were not written for the facts of life of the size and scope of folks at New Hampshire. So what I found when I came in '99 was a lot of the officers were not following at that time many of the policies, and the majority of them had to be rewritten because they were written for an agency that was much, much larger. So there was no rhyme or reason to following them, given our size of the department, size of the town, equipment available, or whatever. The other aspect that came up during that time was that they're looking at the process. There had been some financial irregularities, which the Attorney General's office was brought in and dealt with in that process. Ultimately, because of those three issues, I did report ultimately to the commission that at that time, because we were a department that was, I think, only 24 officers then, and was understaffed then, that accreditation, while a great thing, because I've gone to the accreditation schools, I go lieutenant bills every year to them. And so it's not unknown to us, but that was not on the front burner. And because of those three problems. But accreditation was done before I was hired, had failed, if you will.
Yeah, and the minutes actually respond to that, and I tend to be blunt, and of course emails are.
Well, that's why I wanted to give you the history. So for going what you're talking about for the future, one of our lieutenant that does a lot of our admin stuff, he continues to go to the CLIA training around the state. What we have looked at, and I've talked to past commissions about, is before this department can jump into that, I believe it would be better to start at the state level accreditation. The police academy has a state level accreditation. Level 4 of that, unless they've changed the levels recently, is actually national accreditation.
I went through, and because I talked about what were the pitfalls and such with a lot of these departments. A lot of them are very tiny departments which achieve state level accreditation, and some of them are around actually smaller than us. And then some, of course, larger than us.
And my lieutenant who does the policies, and as Fred said, the policies then, the ones that were borrowed from other agencies, we're constantly rewriting them. But for a number of years, we had to rewrite almost the whole book to get them to our thing. But for the future, our plans are to look at that. But we need two things. We need staffing, and with all the default budgets we've had, the lieutenant that's going to do that project, and he knows that's one of his projects, right now, there's no way that one person can do it with all his other assignments. So if you look in the current past budget, there is a civilian position that has not been budgeted for or filled for a number of years. That position was going to work with him, take care of the vehicles and some other issues, and then he could jump into accreditation.
Well,
So accreditation has never been off the radar, but it's been put on the back burner trying to get through default budgets. And now this year our operating budget, while the number is bigger, actually our actual money to function operationally is lower than it was last year.
I called the,
Hold on a minute, do any other?
While you were talking, I had a couple of questions.
certainly.
The departments that you went and looked at,
I
or
haven't looked at them.
I mean,
Yeah.
that you went online to
Yeah.
look at,
I
okay?
actually
Were
talked
they
to them.
equal in size to Hooksett,
Yeah,
or were
actually-
they much larger? Or?
Actually, if you go to the CAL, Talia, or whatever it is, org site, you can actually go and list them. And actually, some of them in New Hampshire, this is some of four. Now, I come back, I've done this type of accreditation stuff like ISO 9000, ISO 14000 for major corporations. I work with Hitachi. A lot of these things are pretty straightforward. You just have to have a commitment to do it. I would disagree. My feeling is that this thing was cut off too soon. I got 4 years into it, plus money into it. But that's just my opinion. What I've seen, though, is when you look at some of these guys and you interview them, you talk to them, once they get that commitment, they push it through in 18 months, which is very, very similar to ISO in my experience with a lot of those accreditation processes. Because a lot of stuff is in line. But I think one of the things is because adoption of best practices, first it's very hard to get any information here. I mean, all these sites, all these places have very extensive sites and stuff, annual reports, criminal statistics and stuff like that. It's really, really well known.
Now,
But anyways, I'm offering.
What was
Sure.
the community that you were talking about that offered?
Well, I talked to a bunch of them, but I thought Durham was probably the best because it was a mixture between the UNH campus, which oscillates based on the volume of students, which is upwards of 18,000, plus the community of about 10,000, 8 to 10,000, depending on the statistics
okay.
used for demographics. Also looked at their communications and the issues that they have with dead spots, looked at all kinds of stuff in regards to how they've implemented programs. Which impresses me with their chief is that he's a person that looks at building block mentality, like the idea of basically looking at the system, implementing it, adjusting at the end. His strategic plan is top notch. As a matter of fact, he wrote an article on it, and I'd recommend you read that. It's really a good thing. So if anyone's interested in going, I'd be more than happy to organize it. I know Lieutenant Klein has my email. I think the captains do too. But I'll be here till the end. I can give you a business card. The next thing I wanted to discuss was at the last meeting. One of the things that the chief rightly so said, I don't understand the background in regards to Jay DeFina. It's true from the perspective of his history and his whatever is his report. I've dealt with issues in retaliation. And being in a corporate structure, it's one of the things you have to be on top of, especially when you're dealing with defense contracts. One of the things I did is I said, all right, well, look at this, because I wasn't prepared for finger waving and tongue lashing. But the fact is that I went back and said, okay, give it the benefit of the doubt and look at some of the things and try to look at the police from a police perspective. So I did some research and looked to try to see if there was any key attributes to retaliatory behavior and if you can identify it. I'm in pattern analysis. I also work in applications in regards to counterintelligence, and I look at pattern analysis in regards to things dealing with counterinsurgency, applications in Afghanistan and Iraq. The issue here is there a pattern and can you identify it? So what I try to do is I looked at some of the research. One of the things it said here is that one of his chiefs wrote a paper talking about how do you spot retaliation in the department. And it says simply, the employee's performance evaluation dramatically plummets without objective documentation after the complaint is filed. The employee's performance objectives significantly increase in the number and intensity above and beyond the written job description. The employee is suddenly subjected to an intense scrutiny. The employee is transferred to a position that is lower in status without an objective need to do so. The employee's shift hours are changed for no apparent reason.
The employee is denied opportunities available to other workers as training and company perks. An immediate supervisor is building a case against a subordinate rather than correcting poor performance. I thought that was unique because I wasn't expecting to see something of this nature. So anyhow, I figured it was a good read. I understand I don't know the facts. Heck, maybe Jay is what everyone says it is. I met the guy, I don't really know him very well. I don't think that's the fact. That's my opinion based on my experience. But anyways, I have these papers outlining that.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask something back to Mr. Lozano?
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Quickly.
You are correct with that, but two things to consider is that those are correct, but in this situation, number one, you still don't know all the facts, and number two, part of the reason for our large legal bills is to make sure that that specific issue is not something that we have done. So while, and this has been discussed in past years with budget committees and with council, that spending legal money up front to deal with personnel issues the correct way to avoid the problem you're talking about is an investment.
Absolutely.
I know.
Wait a minute. I'll concede that fact graciously. The issue in regards to pattern analysis, though, is when you look at it, incompetence, when you hire an incompetence, is a flatline projection. You're always looking at incompetence from the sense of it's a linear effect. It's not an exponential effect. So I can do a simple plot of reprimands, and if you see an uptick or a swing that's significant, I mean, just to give you an idea, I haven't done it, but I guess I could plot legal bills. And if you plot those together, and if you look at, you could look at legal, you could look at, heck, we could,
Let's wrap it up.
yeah, no, we could look at three different things that apply, and we could say it's.
I
The
know.
idea there, though, it doesn't indicate that it exists.
I just wanted for everybody to know that we have gone to great lengths with legal to make sure that dealing with any employee issues here,
Right.
that we have been aware of the issue you brought up and other issues.
Yep. And I agree.
Thank you.
Just so everybody knows.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Fred Bishop, President of Hooksett for 30 years. I also served on the Hooksett Police Commission for 6 years along with Chief Oliver, Acting Chief Jeff Plant, and also Chief Rapiotis. And obviously I've listened and watched a lot of the criticism that's taken place over the last couple of years. I wanted to take this opportunity. I don't have a statement to read. This really comes from the heart. I want to thank all three of you commissioners for the work that you're doing. Obviously, you do this as volunteers. There's a lot of stress that gets put on you, and I really compliment you for acting very professional in handling your duties. The issues that we're hearing about recently are no different from when I served as a commissioner back under Chief Oliver and Acting Chief Plant. One of the first things that I noticed after joining the commission when Chief Oliver was here is, boy, there's a lot of personnel issues in a police department. I never dreamed that you would find this in a professional police department. There was also a lot of turnover. When I first joined the commission, there were 5 vacancies, and Hooksett generally has had a lot of turnover. And I think you've taken a lot of heat for that, and this is the same type of issue that Hooksett has faced for a number of years. One thing I also want to compliment you on with the speakers tonight have been extremely professional, and I want to compliment that, bringing facts and suggestions. The dialogue that goes on behind the scene on the email distribution list, the Hooksett issue is really something different. There's name calling, bullying, and I just think that's totally unprofessional. I think anyone who criticizes another individual in public, really it's unprofessional, and I personally find it disgusting. I'm glad we haven't seen this here tonight. So again, I want to compliment you for the hard work that you're doing. I encourage you to stay the course. I attend church regularly, but I don't often quote the Bible. But there's something that always is in the back of my mind is that, and it's something like if someone hits you on the right cheek, give the person your left. It would be very easy for you to retaliate for some of the negative name calling and bullying that you've been the subject of. And I compliment you for not doing that and taking the high road. And the same with you, Chief of Gratuitous. You're the ultimate professional. Came with impeccable credentials from Raven and Candia, where you faced similar circumstances. Very different, very easy for you to get up and retaliate. You're taking the cool road, and I want to compliment you. You run a fine police department, very fast action to citizens. You do not hear complaints in the media about inefficient police department and lack of responding to consumers and businesses. In fact, just the opposite of couple of the business visitations I've done with the Economic Development Committee. We've asked some of the people we've interviewed, what's been your experience with departments? And 2 out of the 4 that we've interviewed so far singled out the police department first and the fire department second, are those that have been very responsive and they think very highly of it. So again, try to stay the course. I appreciate what you're doing for the citizens of Hooksett.
Thanks, Fred.
Mr. Chairman, I'm scheduled to be on as a scheduled appointment, but candidly, my presentation, it won't be that long. I can do it in public input. Mike Sorrell was stung by a wasp around 4:30. I got a call that he was being rushed to the hospital, so I don't think he'll be here to present his comments. I commend Mr. Bishop's comments tonight. Before I give my prepared remarks, I just want to make a couple comments. I hope I don't disappoint you in terms of my presentation tonight, but I'm going to do my best not to. I've been following these proceedings for a little bit now, and one of the things I inferred was that I'm probably one of the townies, old-timers, and naysayers who have had a few comments to make relative to what I perceive as an attack, on this police department. And an unfair one at that. So tonight I'm going to be mentioning names. It's not in any attempt to embarrass, but obviously we've gotten to the point where it has become a personality conflict to a large extent, and it's going to be necessary to at least attribute. So that said, I'll make some prepared remarks. Mr. Chairman, may I give my written remarks to the Secretary for her use, so she doesn't have to copy them. Thank you. My name's Michael DiBattino, live at 2 Tay Road, Hooksett. You probably know I've spent a few years serving on various boards. One thing I learned in that process is you can never be too educated. And as a public official, it's imperative that we know the laws by which we are governed as well as governing. The public meeting law is probably one of the most confusing of them all, and I was pleased to see that we've been enlightened a little bit tonight relative to the issue of what is a public meeting. And certainly consultations with legal parties are not a meeting under the law. I urge anyone that's serving in a public office to get to know these laws. And there are other laws that are important, including the laws that obligate a public official to act in a responsible manner. When one takes that oath of office, you have responsibilities as well as benefits, and it's imperative that you know them. One of the most important of those is not to interfere with another body. It's a violation. We had an ethics clause that was written and was pulled this year, but that really is not important. There are state laws that far supersede any of our local ethics laws. And if you're going to serve on the budget committee or the school board or the police commission or the council, you need to know what laws constrain your actions. I was recently jolted by a letter to the editor in the Hooksett Banner, which read, "I am appalled by the behavior of the Hooksett police chief. and the Hooksett Police Commission. What's to be appalled about? Are we to be appalled that in the face of a constant and withering, nearly year-long assault, that the chief and the commissioners have demonstrated unbelievable restraint? Over the past months, going on nearly a year, I have observed much appalling behavior, but none of it has been on the part of this Hooksett Police Department. The chief and the commissioners have responded professionally and respectfully to every question. Let's review some of the events that brought us to the place we are at today. The recent irritants appear to originate from two events. The first arises from a decision to reduce the hours of the school resource officer and to seek some cost sharing between the police department and the school department. The second relates to the replacement of the safety center signage. Due to the limits of time, today's comments will be limited to the former. The issue of the SRO commenced as a respectful exchange of communications and proposed solutions between the school superintendent and the police chief. In an apparent effort to bolster the case for maintaining a full-time officer, an elected official, a school board member, Mrs. Willett, wrote a letter to the editor that created the impression that the Hooksett schools were infested with drugs and weapons. As could have been and should have been anticipated, a firestorm ensued. And when the smoke cleared, a number of facts were evident. First, the number of drugs and weapons-related issues was far fewer than we were led to believe. Secondly, the nature of those issues did not support the level of concern that was raised in that letter. One of the highlighted drug issues involved a pot pipe that was found in the teacher's lounge. The much-reported weapons incident involved a knife that was taken from the school and made its way onto a school bus. How did these incidents happen? Has anyone investigated how a pot pipe made its way into the teacher's lounge? Did it fall out of a purse or a pocket of one of the teachers? How about the knife? How did the student sneak a knife out of the Corley school and onto a school bus? These are questions that the public is asking itself. How did a student sneak that knife out? And finally, why were those reports not communicated to the police department in a timely manner? Doesn't the school resource officer have the responsibility to file a daily report just like any other officer on the force would have? A very serious question has been raised on whether those issues were being reported properly and in a timely manner, and whether those confidential incidents may have been shared with a party or parties not authorized to access them. New Hampshire General Laws, Chapter 193, and the New Hampshire Board of Education Directive, ED 317, address reporting requirements for certain incidents. Specifically, written reports of covered incidents must be filled or filed within 48 hours. The statute limits the exchange of these confidential matters to law enforcement officials and school administrators. Has an investigation addressed the question of whether Maura Willett had accessed any of those reports which she cited? Would not that access have been a violation of Chapter 193? It is clear that Officer DeFina and Maura Willett have had extensive communications. if this confidential information has been shared with unauthorized parties, have the affected parents been notified of such breach? Furthermore, what is really behind the effort to protect the SRO position? We can now clearly see that the focus of this effort is not just to protect the position of the SRO, but the objective is specifically to save the position for Officer DeFina. The proponents have made it clear that no other officer will be acceptable. Why? Clearly, the tenure of Officer DeFina has been marked by a near constant conflict with the administration, and he has faced repeated disciplinary actions. We can see that this conflict dates all the way back to the hiring of Agrafiotis as the Hooksett police chief. Whatever promises may have been made by prior chiefs or acting chiefs, it became very clear early on that a number of officers harbored resentments at the hiring of a new chief from outside of the organization. In typical response to the latest disciplinary action, an anonymous list of grievances against the chief has appeared. Reappeared would be a more accurate word, as this list is essentially a warmed-over recitation of the same list that was raised 4 years ago. Those charges were made and adjudicated and found to be without merit. Most importantly, that incident left the Commission realizing that its ill-advised attempt to respond to the complaint left it severely compromised, and it left the chief unfairly maligned. I would trust that no amount of badgering will compel this board to repeat that mistake. It is important to know that despite the many allegations made against the chief by this officer, and considering the long history of the Teamsters' willingness to grieve such complaints, that no record exists of any complaint having been brought before either the Superior Court of the State of New Hampshire or the New Hampshire Public Employees Labor Board. No complaints exist that warrant those two venues. Instead, the actions that have been taken are in direct violation of the union contract, which specifically prohibits any officer from taking actions which are outside of the agreed-upon grievance process. It is abundantly clear that this officer has conspired with public officials to interfere with the Hooksett Police Department's operations. The Budget Committee's actions to punish this chief and the department through the budget process are a clear violation of state laws regulating the behavior of public officials. Has this commission enforced the contractual obligations of the Teamsters union contract to restrain Officer DeFina from taking his grievance outside the process? The citizens of Hooksett are a party of interest to this contract, and we have a right to be assured that its provisions are enforced. One final note. The coordinated attack letters in the banner never fail to assert that they represent the opinions and feelings of the citizens of Hooksett. Let me assure you that they do not respect a silent majority that finds them unfair, distasteful, and abhorrent. Many have communicated their interest in correcting these problems with the public officials who are responsible and are willing to take the necessary legal steps to do so. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else?
They're
anxiously waiting.
I am not, I thought I was next, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just,
I'm going to call the public minutes for now if nobody's getting up. And we'll resume the public minutes at the end.
Good evening, Mark Eagle, Main Street. Welcome everybody to the meeting. I guess tonight I want to tie up some loose ends with the new commissioner here, and again, I haven't officially welcomed you to the board, so welcome aboard. At the last meeting, the commission voted to approve the acceptance of comments and statements made by citizens. And so at this point, for the last several months, I've been respectfully requesting submission of minutes that were recorded and for the March and April meetings. And at that time, it was always being taken under advisement and under consideration. So having had that vote of last month, I would like to respectfully submit those minutes again as a last-ditch effort to get those minutes in. And I do have copies for everybody that I would like to present to the commission.
Those are just as attachments.
Those are attachments, absolutely.
I think that's what we agreed upon
I wanna
at
play
the
by the
last meeting, that the question became whether or not those comments could be included in the minutes, and since the minutes are not taken verbatimly,
We move to let them document submittal under new business.
that's right. So I guess,
However you want to handle that, I'd like to try one more time since you voted on that approval to do so. Anybody? Okay. Moving on, because I only have 5 minutes. I do have some questions based on the other assertion by the commission at the beginning, and this is kind of impromptu, I guess, that the comment was made that the letters that were created and written in response to the step 5 or step 7, I forget what step it is now, step 5 I believe, to the council expressing concerns about individual candidates for commissioners. We are now learning from the commission here, and the town council should probably be alerted to that all you're doing is changing the name on a form letter without actually considering those concerns of those individual appointees.
I mean, their concerns.
Step 5 allows the commission to express concerns over individuals that you have, which was abolished, right? But the letter stating Steve LaRue and those other 2 candidates, we are now learning tonight that those names were simply inserted into a form letter. And I'm not complaining about that. I just want to highlight the fact that the commission has now admitted that all they're doing when sending in a very important letter for a letter of concern, considered confidential, that the town council needs to be advised that all you're doing is changing the name on a form letter and not taking any consideration whatsoever for the individual who's named in that letter. That's all I wanted to say.
That's not true. All it is for those that have past police experience. That's why even the part-time person, whether it was relevant or not for his short time, had police experience. That's why it's a form letter, just for that instance. Nothing personal against that person other than the police experience.
But I'm wondering if the council, in their considerations, takes that letter into consideration, not just for police experience,
That's what the
but for
letter.
others.
That's what the letter says.
Okay, so now you're stipulating here that the letter with a name on it on a form letter is just to outline the fact that they don't have business experience and they have former police experience. Is that my understanding?
I believe that is correct.
Thank you. Okay. You also stated, I guess, that you don't have any policies or procedures or any manuals and stuff. So what I've been doing in the last several months, and I guess in response to these other fine, respectful gentlemen here, is I was asked, as a member of the Budget Committee, but first and foremost, I am a Hooksett citizen. We are all Hooksett citizens, and I've said this repeatedly at other meetings. We are all here because we care, because we're passionate about this town. And one way or another, we don't always disagree on how we're going to get there, but we do want to get there. And respectfully, I have said each and every time that I come in here, and everybody knows how I operate, is I deal with a process. I don't deal with individuals. I don't criticize people for their statements, and I don't expect people to criticize me for my statements. I have a right to my opinion based on the First Amendment. The chief has repeatedly invited any citizen, and me in particular, way back in October, to attend these meetings to understand and ask questions about how the commission operates and how the department operates. I took him up on that offer, and I haven't left since. I missed 2 meetings since last October because I was out of town. Respectfully, I want to find out how the process operates without criticizing the people who operate it. And that was the fault of, respectfully, Mr. DiPatetto saying that. I do not, personally, I'm not going to speak for anyone else in town or anyone else on the hooks and issues, which is irrelevant to this commission. Hooks and issues is irrelevant to this commission. But I speak about the process and simplifying this. A parent does not say to a child, bad boy. A parent says, your behavior is naughty. So what we are examining is performance. We are not examining individuals who perform those actions and statements. This was not a personal attack of any kind. I am here to examine the process. And I've been invited to ask questions, and I've been here every month to do so. And you have all graciously answered them, for the most part. I have learned tremendously from when I started way back in October. And I thank you for inviting me, and I will continue to be here. However, the kinds of questions that I do ask are not the kinds of questions I originally started asking way back in October. In fact, way back in May, when I graciously asked you guys, and you graciously responded, what happened to the old, are you going to repurpose the old sign? And you all said, sure, let's do it. And I just found out tonight it's going to be done. Okay, a year and a half later. Great. But at the time, that was all very professionally handled. Okay? And the types of questions, the more I show up at these meetings, the types of questions are changing. For good or bad, it's just more another aspect of this department and its management styles that I want to understand. And so respectfully, I ask these questions, not as a personal attack, and nobody here should take it as a personal attack. I'm trying to understand the process and how the management style operates. So in answer to in your request to some specific questions of the commission at this point, if it begged you, please. And I've written down the questions, so if I don't finish, I would respectfully ask if I can submit these for responses in the future. Okay? A lot of talk has been happening about, a lot of answers have been coming up about personnel issues. And some of the responses always come up as, we don't understand because it's personnel issues. And I guess I want to find out how the department operates and what in the function as it interrelates between the management and the personnel here. So I guess my first question is, does the Police Commission conduct regular yearly or biannual employee performance evaluation reviews on the police chief? And if so, how often are those reviews done by the chief, on the chief? And who conducts those performance evaluations on the chief? Again, I'll just read through these questions. You can answer them afterwards. I only have 5 minutes. From a management hiring practice perspective, not as a personal issue perspective, would the chief or commission ever support a candidate for hire if that candidate has a previous or current ongoing blemish on their personnel record, such as lying, candor, insubordination, or have been terminated from a previous law enforcement position for actions that a previous employer found to be unacceptable and warranted in the termination? From a management standpoint, what do you expect the current employee turnover to be at the end of the year of 2009? Do you expect or anticipate more terminations and resignations in the remaining months of 2009 as a management standpoint, not as a personnel standpoint? Previous conversations and previous meetings have discussed SRO questions, and I have a few questions to finalize on that as well.
Mr. Neville, if you'd like to turn those in, please.
Certainly, thank you. If I could get an answer by next month or soon thereafter, I'd appreciate it. Can I submit these other minutes from March and April as well?
Well, he read in the minutes that it said under new business, so they'll have to be submitted under new business.
Do I present them next month under business? Is that what you
No, we haven't been to any business.
We haven't.
Okay, so we'll do it tonight under new business.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
There you go.
Oh, one. All right.
Jamie, Rick Sullivan, live at 7 Morgan Drive. I'll join the previous speaker in thanking you all for your service to the town. It's a combination, it's probably longer than most of us in the room who live in the community, and to the chief as well for his service and the command staff. It was interesting to hear Rudy indicate that Hooks at Issues is irrelevant. I think Hooks at Issues and the folks on the Budget Committee will operate through Hooks at Issues have been driving much of the negative criticism of the chief and the command staff. Sometimes on substantial issues, and sometimes it's on the pickiest stuff I've ever heard in my life. We must have had at least, since I've been in these meetings, 13 or 14 references to a meeting that could have been illegal. Started at a different time than posted. 13 times the folks here in front of us have said, "Now watch us off." We have this atomic clock over here now, so there shouldn't be any question as to what time we start or finish. It still came across 4 or 5 more meetings after that. I don't know when. I've been having trouble trying to figure out when the nitpicking stuff comes off the long list of items that are justifying some of the pursuit of the fact that the folks in front of us are somewhat incompetent in their work. If you've got something serious and you want to bring it up 3 or 4 times, that's okay. The nitpicky stuff is just, after you get a mea culpa, let it go. Minutes, if I may. Minutes of a public meeting are the responsibility of that body, not of a citizen coming forward and saying, "I don't like the minutes. I have my own recording. Here's the transcription." That is absolutely zero standard in a public body. None. If you want to send it in to the public body and they agree to accept it, even file it, or accept it and review it, it doesn't mean that they're going to change their minutes. They're not bound to do that. They're not even bound to let you stand here and recite why the minutes are wrong. If they listen to it, it's courtesy. So that this minutes thing has got to be ridiculous, actually. If we're taking it, that's it. It's in the possession of these folk, and that's the record. The minutes themselves are never meant to be a word for word document. They're a synopsis. Anybody who's spending time in public meetings or even business meetings knows that that's a good and functioning way of going. You have a basic idea what's going on. You need detail, move over. It was also interesting to hear Rudy state tonight that Hooks at Issues, and there are folks on Hooks at Issues, let me stop here for a moment. We're doing some positive things for the community. One of our officers had a problem, a tree went through the roof of his house. He's out there trying to fix it, he fell off, he injured himself. And one of the ladies on Hooks at Issues posted that, indicated people should come forward to help. Hooks at Landscaping jumped on within hours. Another lady volunteered, very capable and physically ready to go 17-year-olds. That's good stuff. That's a good thing for this operation of doing. But if Rudy says he hasn't used that, I have what I think may be his most recent posting.
Point of order.
This I beg your pardon, this is October 5, August 5. Rudy says, after going through a lot of stuff here about the PD and how incapable they are, flux mixed with chaos and confusion with a dash of spite makes for gross mismanagement. I don't think that's very positive. And I think it does have something to do with what comes forward from other folk on this site. Now, the chief, we've gone on here for something over a year about the SRO, its position, whoever occupies it, should it be a full-time job or a part-time job? the folks who are supposed to make those determinations lies with the chief.
Mr. Sullivan, I have to call you, that's your 5 minutes.
I'll finish the two sentences if I may.
Okay.
Those are the two folk who should direct the program. And the kids are not being served by the controversy going on and on and on. The chief has taken action recently to appoint another responsible officer to handle that position. Officer Defina, totally without regard to his capability or not, and that position has been reassigned. The chief has taken charge of this situation, and since the school is starting next week, if we all get behind that new program, I think the kids would be better off, and the town would be better off. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Any more public input? Seeing none. Approval of minutes of last meeting. Public session for Tuesday, July 21st.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
I have some instructions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
They're minor ones. On page 2, and I can go back through these. In some of the paragraph, it says he, but you don't know who he is referring to, so some of those I'd like to correct. And the ones where it states the superintendent should be capitalized. And then there's one on page 2 at the top. It says the committee did not recall if they were discussed in non-public. I think we should put both Commissioner Roy and Gagnon, and then, as you said, my name was spelled wrong.
It's not mine.
And finally, on page 9, I think when we were talking about the CIP, my statement was that the CIP needed to be married to the master plan, and not was married, needed to be married. That's all I have for the public comment.
Yeah, page 11, Commissioner Gagnon. Stated that this was supposed to be not at the place. On page 11, where we have Commissioner Gagnon stated that this was no rather than not the place. Okay.
Motion on the floor with amended corrections by Joanne. We have I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Non-public,
I just
July
said,
21st.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Discussion, changes?
Yeah, I just have one on page 2. Instead of the word enforce, reinforce. It's Commissioner McHugh. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Motion with repairs.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Oh, okay.
All right. Where are we here? No scheduled appointments. We've dealt with those. Town budget report. Yeah.
You actually have two budget reports in front of you. You have from the town their June 2009 final unaudited from last year, 2008-2009, which according to the town's numbers, and they match our numbers, shows a final number for last year's budget, PD expending 90.89%. So that's the end of last year. Again, that is unaudited, but it's the town's final numbers.
You will have, when we do the budget, what that summative report of what that 292 represents?
Yes.
Okay. I thought I meant it for this meeting, but when I saw the minutes, it was for, I guess, when we prepared the budget, so that's
Right.
fine.
Right,
Okay.
but what I was thinking is when we, was a line item comparison, so we can go down and say
Right, okay,
why during the budget process, that's how we try to do it with the commissioners, is compare, see how we ended up, look at each line, what's up, what's down, whatever, explain, if we need to, why that is where it is, and then compare it to what's happened maybe further in the past and further what we're asking for in the future.
well, I was looking at, if you don't mind,
No,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
What I was looking for, what it represented, say, you're talking about your complement of officers, so you don't have a full complement of officers. Does this represent the salary of one or two individuals? Is it less overtime? What does it really represent? This,
Yeah, we can give a general answer, but remember...
it's fine if I have a general
For
answer.
personnel, it kind of goes up and down.
I can appreciate that, but I mean, a general answer would be fine.
Right, and that's kind of what, by you getting the format, if you look on the town's report, when you get the town's report,
Right,
the second page, they have wages as one line.
right,
When you look at Francine's report, we break out the wages, we break out overtime. And in a future year, when we have a union contract, we will break out that money from the warrant article.
mhm,
So what we usually do is, that's why we go over this every month, so that, because it's an ongoing
right,
subject on any line, is for you to look at the new one that you just got, see what was spent and what wasn't, and then we can talk about it every month, so that kind of keeps a running tab, if you will.
I guess what if I might continue?
Mhm, of course.
Where I was going with that, one of the questions I had is, who signs the police manifest month to month? You do, okay. And it would be helpful, and I guess another question I had, supposedly you have a line that you're overexpending and you need to get from another line. Do you have the sole authority, or do you need to get the authority from the commission to, overspend, not only to overspend, but to have that authorization?
I have the sole authority as long as the bottom line is okay. But by keeping track of that every month, you see the trend, so let's just say vehicle maintenance, let's just say that we are having a terrible year with vehicle breakdowns or accidents or something. As a commission member, you would see that line in here, you would see substantial numbers each month, and you would be able to see that. So before that line ever got over 100%, you would have already had an indication when you look at, from Francine's report, the monthly average to what was spent each month. You can then track the trends that way.
Yeah. I guess what
But we don't write down though every.
Yeah,
that's more of a.
And a
global-
summative report would really help, because if you have a line that you not only overexpended, but you've taken from another line, that line that you have, you spent it all, doesn't necessarily mean that that line represents everything that was spent on it. It has other things that you.
No,
We
we
don't
don't
overexpend the
move
one
money
line.
around.
Because the bottom line is what counts. So if he, like he was using, for example, maintenance, takes an extra 20,000, maintenance will just be overspent. We don't show it coming out of another
Yeah,
line.
we don't do that.
That way we can question,
okay,
why are we
okay.
overspent? Maybe we should
Yeah,
get
no,
rid of a
as we know
vehicle.
from the budget committee rules, that you can move monies around.
Right.
We don't do that. We stick with a strict line, so that when you look at what was spent in that line, whether that line ended up being even, up or down, we will continue to put, say it's maintenance again, in that line, and at the end of the year, say
So it's
that's
an
it.
overspent
So
line.
you might have a maintenance line of 150% overexpended. You could have a wage line that is 75% expended,
Mm-hmm.
and then the bottom line is still as long as we stay.
Well, I
within-
guess conversely, it was the lines that had remaining amounts. Okay, that,
But we don't shift them.
right, but
Right.
the lines that have remaining amounts,
Right.
why they do.
Right, and that's what we try to do when you go at budget time, is looking at this final report,
Right,
what we're asking for, and you'll see in the packet that I put together, what each line, the reasoning, you'll not only see the line, a summary breakdown to give a rough idea, but then there's also on the bottom, and you may remember from past years, the budget committee, explanations, and that's what we go through with the budget process. So when you look at that, then you could look at what the explanation is, what the money that goes with that explanation,
Okay.
what
Okay.
prior year's allotment was, and then what was actually spent.
Okay, fine, I appreciate that, thank you.
Historically, haven't we explained that deficiency or the under expenditure for the budget committee at budget time?
Yeah.
Like the 292, 256 she's talking about?
Right, usually the budget committee, different members over different years, they'll see the new budget that's actually the commission's budget that goes, I present a budget to the commission, you people make any changes you want, it goes to the council, they make any changes, it goes to the budget committee. The budget committee asks questions at points about different lines that are above, below, or equal, also as to what was spent, but also in comparison of what we're asking for in the new budget.
Mhm.
So different budget committees,
But you're saying as an automatic,
Yeah, well,
presentation.
your initial question, I know we've analyzed that variance
okay,
before
good,
submission.
thank you.
And for the record, and I'm fully aware that some of these departments are small, or their budgets are small, but the 292, 256 that we are returning is the largest amount to the general fund amongst any of these other departments. Once again,
Steve, what we're on the budget here?
the last year's or the new one?
No, well, not even that part of it. They have the impact fees in there.
Oh, yes, town gives us
There's 86,000 in the police impact fee.
yes.
I don't see why we can't tap those laptops into that impact fee as a communication project. If we strap it in with that communication issue, because we needed that tower to make them work, why can't we tap these impact fees?
Because the law is very specific
Well,
about impact.
no, they're very good about making sure, but I want to research that and see if we can,
You can ask Christine.
Yeah, we'll have to
well,
ask
if you
Christine.
can buy a Ford pickup with a plow.
Yeah, you have to ask Christine because she's very, very,
I still think you could probably get it into the communication, because it was
We
all
did.
tied to the expansion of the town.
As you remember, one of the things when you look at the, let's see, there had been at one point the 43,958 levy on your current, not last year, but on the current that was spent was for communications project, and that was a similar question that was raised by the commission. We presented the information to the town's legal counsel, and they said that yes, because that was an expansion of the program of communications due to
Right.
growth.
right,
So yes, we can research that. Joanne, the way we normally do it is when something comes up like that, we go back to Christine, it goes to Bart Mayer, and with the
Right.
specific, what are you specifically looking for, and then using that criteria is whether it can be
Right,
spent or
right.
not. So yes, we can research that.
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, we can research that. And that's just so you know how we do it.
All right.
There are no questions on last year's budget. You also have this year's budget. The report you have is only 4 weeks into 52. But that puts the town, or puts us at 7.69% as of the date of this report, and the PD was 6.09% expended. Which obviously at the beginning
right.
But you can start seeing, Joanne, the trends in the individual blocks
Right.
as compared to the, especially on Francine's report, the average, and then you'll start seeing, you'll pick up trends, which we usually try to tell you about. You'll see that in the variance report, but it's also trends that the commission has historically had different questions from different people. What is that trend if they don't already know what it is or haven't heard it. So that's on actually this one, not the one that just ended.
Right. I had a question, and I should have asked this last month. On the line that's the gasoline line,
On the old,
on the last, the one that ended.
Yep.
Why are the lines so erratic? No.
It's because of when the bills come from the state.
Oh, okay. So
Because
that's what it
we
is.
get our gas through
I was
the
going to
state
say, there's
DOT
no way
pump.
that gas...
No, we get our gas through
Okay.
DOT pumps.
Okay.
Everybody has cards and IDs, but it's when they send us the bill and when the bill gets posted
Okay,
at the town.
good.
You're right,
Thank
because you look at some months and it's crazy, and some months it's
Yeah, I
obviously
didn't know
too
if you
low.
were going on fumes or what.
No, we pay the bills when they come in. We review them obviously, but we
Okay.
pay them.
Okay,
when they
thank
come
you.
in.
Appreciate it.
So again, that was last year's. This year's, I think I just told you. Any questions on this year's?
We're good.
FYI, there should be a press release coming out from Public Service this week, general press release. There's a transformer that's being moved that'll be coming through the Hooksett area. There's very little information being given out about it for security reasons, but there will be a general one, so I just wanted to bring it up tonight. So for the board, and for citizens, if at some point you either hear about it or you see it or you wonder why traffic's all messed up, refer to their press release. We have a lot more operational items that we'll be doing with that we won't discuss publicly, but just in general, so you say, what was that?
What's the route?
That's kind of not spread out either. But it will impact our community quite a bit. Let's see. We all, I think, have heard that Walmart is having their grand opening tomorrow morning at 7:30. I think some good news that I saw from our point of view was that Walmart will be open from 6 a.m. to midnight. I believe originally we were told it was going to be a 24-hour store, which was caused us some concern thinking about what Epping has gone through with the 24-hour store and issues that happen during the night when we traditionally don't have as much manpower available. I'm certainly glad to see them open, but I think the cutback hours will benefit us, especially given our budget status at this point. Walmart also, the police department is receiving, and I'll be accepting it tomorrow morning from Walmart. The council, I believe, has already discussed this, a grant from Walmart for $2,500 to the police department. Fire department got one also. What we're looking at is we currently, and I've talked to the administrator about this, we currently have the DARE account, the old DARE program that the schools don't want anymore, but we used to put money into that account if citizens donated to the town to be used back toward the schools or the children or whatever. So the administrator is working with finance to look about either changing that name of the account or whatever, so it's a more generic account that money would go into, and other donations, again, to be used in the schools, whether it's an SRO program or whatever you want to call the program. Right now it's locked into a DARE program by the wording. So we will be accepting the donation tomorrow morning, and we're waiting for the town to let us know the mechanics of what line that would go into.
A couple of defibrillators?
That's for the fire department, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's also a donation to the fire department for $2,500 to the library, and $5,000 to the soup kitchen in Manchester.
Okay. I was only aware of ours.
Yeah.
Good news.
So that's for tomorrow morning. Just a reminder, September 22nd, I think I may have mentioned this before. I'm sorry, not September 22nd. September 30th at the council meeting, local government center will be presenting training for board members of all boards. So hopefully,
I already responded to
okay, so hopefully a majority of commission members can go. I'll be there, just a reminder. I think I may have mentioned that.
Good.
And then there's this one also.
Yes, that's LGC training for the staff. The department staff will be going to LGC training on the budget process. Obviously, there are different laws that change each year, and we do a lot of that type of training, so the staff will be going to that. One of the things that you may or may not have caught, I think there was an article in the paper, Dan, I don't remember, was, or maybe it was coming in.
Yesterday or today, I think.
Dr. Hitchcock?
Yeah.
Dr. Hitchcock, as many people may know, have medevac helicopters. They've always been located up in Lebanon. Because of weather issues, there's times where we have great weather down here and they can't fly from up there, or the other way around. So Dartmouth is putting one of their helicopters down at the Manchester airport. The reason I bring that up is if you go back a number of years now, I don't remember how many, you will find that the heliport that's out here was put in mainly for the fire department for medevac issues. It's a federally registered private heliport, and obviously for the citizens of Hooksett or anybody that's coming through Hooksett and has some issue, having another place for a medevac to land, if that's the need that the fire department has, would be a benefit to the injured person. So that's the primary reason, but over the years, people have asked about the heliport or whatever, but it's just interesting because this makes it, with
Dartmouth being there, that's good for us as citizens if us or our families ever need that type of service. It's closer than it was before. I think that's good, especially given the growth of our community still, and as all of us know, the traffic routes and the traffic flows through here, which are much greater than our population.
I was curiosity on that heliport.
Yeah.
Is that certified for all aircraft, heavy as well? In regards to the approach and so on? The power lines.
Yep, the approach, that was all done with the FAA.
Right.
They came down, they certified it. I believe, I didn't get the license upstairs, I believe it just says private heliport. I know Blackhawks can land there. I'm not sure if anything larger than a Blackhawk could land there.
Is that integrated into our like emergency response in regards to? Because one of the things that was one of the things I was looking into is in regards to evac, like emergency evac. Did we do a survey in the town in regards to all the possible ways to land helicopters? I know
Yes,
here.
fire department has it as part of their medical plan.
Right.
They've always had a number of locations in town that were pre-designated as landing zones. When we added this, part of the reason, there were three main reasons. The main reason was to have a location that was near here because it would be easier for them to bring a patient here, depending on the geography or the location of the accident, if you will, or incident, and get on the medevac here rather than, you're not going to land on Route 3 or something like that. The second was fire department, the forestry people use helicopters for fighting the fires. By having this here, they can land one of those helicopters here, and the firefighters can fill the tank of that ship from here, rather than ship having to go back to Concord or Manchester. So the firefighting, or the forest fire end of the fire department thought that was a big benefit. The third benefit, which would be, hopefully never used, but could be, would be a law enforcement end. And that may be just, if you have a crime scene, you take aerial photographs. It just makes it easier to have somewhere close. One last thing was, and I don't know if it made it to the minutes years ago, was this is a public service right-of-way out here. And we always in the past had an agreement, and still do to some extent with public service, that if we needed a helicopter and they had the one that they contract with available, we could use that.
It's in the minutes.
It's in the minutes, okay. So part of this here was that if we had some issue going on, that doesn't mean that we can't still ask them to provide the town a helicopter, fire or police for some issue, and that then they would have a place to land their ship also. So that joint effort is still it's one of those things you hope you never use, but if you need it, it'll be worth the cost of the asphalt out there.
Do we have a natural disaster or terrorist disaster plan in regards to how it integrates, to how we integrate in regards to state level and federal level?
Yes. Emergency management takes care of all that.
And they're out of
this building, on the other side of the building, right? Yeah, and we have our own chapters in that, and we've worked with that.
So in the case of those situations, who's in command?
Emergency management
Emergency
director.
management.
Who's that?
That's all done. Between Jane and Plum. There was another person filling in for him.
Filling in while he's sick, right? But yeah, emergency management, by state law, emergency management director.
He's still on sick?
Still.
Really?
Who's managing?
Dan Pike.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
So that's dark. One last thing, something Henry and I had actually talked about the other day, and actually a couple of citizens that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks have talked about. Like other departments, kind of like the accreditation, we've looked at citizen programs in the past and what type of programs would we do, and do we have the time and do we have the staff?
Sure.
We had for a number of years some different things that had been on the burner, and we're kind of looking at those again because we're hoping in the next budget year we get more staff. My concern is in doing any program that we do it properly. We certainly can't put on a program to the extent the city of Manchester can, but there are other smaller communities that do programs. So that's one of the things we've been looking at, and we'll continue to look at.
Is there any opportunities in regards to volunteers in regards to that?
Probably. We haven't got to that point yet. I mean, what we've been looking at is what do other communities do and what really can we do. Again, if we tried to present a program like Manchester does, it would fail because we don't have the resources.
Well, that might be a good opportunity in regards to the benchmarking with the Durham Police Department. They seem to have a pretty good outreach. Actually, Goffstown has the next
Goffstown is usually who we do most of our stuff with. A lot of our policies and whatever, because Goffstown is accredited. If you look through our policy book, which is basically 3 of these binders, while we may not be nationally accredited right now, most of those are already written to those standards. Goffstown has been, we do a lot with Goffstown.
I know I've been one of your fierce critics, and I purposely put a little edge in things in order to try to drive feedback. I don't take it personal, because it happens to me too, but it's something that I've had to develop in regards to extracting information in hostile environments. So, I have a hard time sometimes to turn things off, but the fact is that
we need to stay with business.
No, that's fine. I'm just saying it's probably an opportunity in regards to...
Absolutely.
Actually, Goffstown is willing to also, once again, with the caveat of saying it's not a forum in which to try to draw comparisons or who does which where, and some of that issue, just in regards to...
All right. Anything else, Steve?
Actually, that's all we had for the public session tonight.
All right.
You have to allow that gentleman that you told him you would accept his documents.
Oh, in new business, I'm sorry, yes.
You told,
Do I address it again, or do I just?
No, you can just hand it in.
you could just
Okay.
present it.
I don't know over that again, I mean, he's been honest.
No, but he had asked
We don't want
you
to
to
forget.
wait till
Right,
then.
thank you for reminding me. Okay, so I'm just finding it. Again, these are, the point about the minutes, addressing whoever had that concern before, is, yes, I know we don't take verbatim minutes per se. I wouldn't rely on Francine to do that. However, when you look at the minutes later on, they are the permanent record. Moving forward years from now, we look at January 1985 and find out what was said there. And my concern is sometimes the tone of what was there is not accurate. And so, yes, at this particular time, it was a long discussion between the commission and myself. I think I was either alone here with Lauren and Mr. Loisel, I think. But there was a long discussion, and very little of it was addressed. And that's why I thought, hey, I'll sit at home, take 4 hours, write this verbatim, and for as a courtesy to the commission, present it to them. That's all the intention was here. It's not to, I said some stupid things in here too. Okay, we all did. But for the record, the matter is for the record. And whether the minutes are verbatim or not, it's a matter of whatever transpired here should be part of the record.
Again, one thing is, once we get the bugs worked out of it, we will have
And
audio and video to go with your concerns.
Sure.
So it's
Is
not...
this also public input now? Or
No.
No, I wanted to ask you about that.
Just hand it in.
I just wanted to ask you.
All right, any more new business, Steve?
No, I'm okay.
All right. Public input.
Something on a lighter note.
Give me 1 minute.
You have an other business? You have an other business?
I guess you can make one.
They're about to, this is an other business for my own edification.
This was for April.
Do you happen to know with regard to the safety center, whether or not, who granted them their license for the liquor portion?
For the what?
The liquor portion.
For this, you said for the safety center.
Not the safety
I
center.
was going to say, we serve liquor here.
That's down bad.
Thanks, Pete.
I know you guys have it. I mean the Space Center.
Finally thought we had.
Space Center? Is that what you mean? Yeah, no. The Space Center, after that issue occurred, our staff had a number of meetings with the building inspector.
But who issued their liquor licenses?
I don't think they had one. That was one of the issues.
They
They do have one
Yeah, they have a beer and wine.
They have a beer and wine.
for that event, though?
Yeah, they have, it's always there.
Yeah.
Okay.
They do
But
have-
we have our staff has met with the liquor inspectors as far as whether the license, just like whether the town's building permit was gone over or not in that. So that's being looked at from the state level on that. And the town is looking at the usage of the building.
Okay, because I guess from my own standpoint, I think that if they're going to be granted, anybody in town, that they at least should look to the police department to see if the police department has any issues. It
What
should
happened,
be done
yeah.
in conjunction.
We didn't know about that event.
And I appreciate that, but I'm just
Right,
wondering
exactly,
for my
yeah,
own
yeah.
edification.
And when we find something that occurs, an event that occurs in town that, for any reason, in our mind, seems to have gone beyond a permit that they may have, or especially if they don't, we notify the liquor commission, turn all our information over to them, and ask them to investigate from that point,
Okay.
that aspect, if you will.
Okay, I just wondered about that. Thank you
Put
for
a new section in there.
all other business.
Other commission questions.
Well,
Other
actually-
business, other business.
Actually, for the new AG's thing, right to know law, there will actually be a new line down there that says, I got the wording out of there, but something to the effect that this agenda is not necessarily everything that's
Right.
going to be discussed.
Yeah, but, yeah.
But I mean, if you
You can
had
still put it in there.
other,
Yeah, you
another
put it
one,
whatever-
other
yeah,
business.
However you guys want to do it.
Above public input,
Right.
the last one.
I'm sorry.
However you want to do it.
All right, sorry, back to public input.
The council uses new business.
No, they had new business,
We
they
have
have a
new
new
business,
business,
not
but
new
I,
business.
You put an other under
Not related.
Other-
Yeah.
other-
We
it
put
was-
on anything
it came from,
under new business that comes up, we just put it under new business.
yeah,
However you want to put it.
yeah. Thank you, I appreciate you affording me that opportunity.
J.R. Willett again, the Summer Fair. I'd like to clarify something again tonight. That the letter to the editor that we just heard about again tonight, in reference to the safety school reports, had nothing to do with guns and drugs. For some reason, it just keeps coming out with guns and drugs. Had nothing to do with it. That letter has never stated any guns and drugs. Since the safety school reports were brought up again, I have another question concerning them. After reading the sheriff's report concerning safety school reports, Captain Cecilio claimed the chief ordered him to conduct a search, reports having to do with guns, knives, and drugs. Why guns and drugs? There were no mention in the letter to the editor that the chief was concerned about. He also claimed during the investigation that approximately 23 reports were turned up, those reports that he brought to the November commission meeting. Why then, on the April 21st, 2009 commission meeting, did he claim that he had hundreds of reports? And in the sheriff's report, he claimed only have 23. You all heard it. You guys are aware of what he had November. He had 3 reports. We all know that. We saw it. He showed the reports. Then he came back here in April and he claimed that he had hundreds and tons more.
I believe your explanation at the point was because it was limited to those 3 specific items. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul? Senior here?
Different time frames.
Oh, was it time frames? I know there was a specific guideline. I mean, we're rehashing stuff we've gone over and over. I didn't make those statements. This commission didn't make those statements that you're rebutting. And
I'm aware of that, but it's been brought up again. So since he brought it up, I want to know why Captain Cecilio was told guns, drugs, and knives. Those are the reports to look for.
do we know why he was told that? I can't ask him because he was the one told.
Maybe you remember, I don't know.
Paul, do you remember?
Commissioners, all I got to say about this, I didn't bring this up again tonight. Mr. Roulette requested that I have an internal investigation. The internal investigation was done. I was cleared of any wrongdoing in that internal investigation. That's all I'm going to say about this subject. I'm not bringing it up. Somebody else brought it up, and I'm not answering to it again. There is a report issued by the Sheriff's Department that was also released to the press, and I was the only one in this whole department ever to have an IA released to the newspaper and the outlets prior to me even being notified of what was in it. And when I was asked by this agency and notified that it had been released to the press, I wasn't even informed what was in it. And now I'm getting questioned on it again. I went to IA. I was clear, 100%. I'm not going to answer these questions again, Commissioner.
And just so you know, Paul, it was released before I even received it.
Commissioner, I was notified by phone and wasn't even advised what was in it before it was already released to the newspaper.
But that's why you were notified, because it was already released by the time I got a phone call.
Same goes for
Sorry, Commissioner, but
The
this
same
is the
No,
only
I
IA in this agency
I
that's ever
understand
been
that.
released to the newspaper.
I understand.
And
Same
it
goes
was
for me.
mine.
I was in the IA too. It was released.
All right.
Well, can the chief answer that question, why you would order him to look for those 3 reports? Since the letter had nothing to
We
do
were
with
looking for safe school reports. And the initial thing, I don't want to rehash it, but the initial thing, the 3 items that Paul reported on were based on the time frame that was in that letter. When the right to know request came in, that covered 2.5 years. So obviously you're going to have a different number. Just like if you ask me how many accidents do we have in the last 24 hours versus how many accidents we have in the last week, you're going to get two different numbers.
That had nothing to do with it. I was saying is the letter had numerous things in there. That's, you know what was in that letter. It had nothing to do with guns and drugs. Why was he being ordered to look for reports of guns and drugs?
I think we wanted to make sure anything we had, because we were having a problem with the school reporting to us properly. We were having other internal problems on our end about reporting properly. We want to see what we actually had in those files.
We're not rehashing this.
All right, we're not rehashing
I mean, can't we just, maybe the productive thing to do is move forward. We didn't bring it up. It's been done and over with.
The reason why I'm asking about this, you had 3 presentations here that you're talking about.
By public
school
citizens.
reports, okay? I'm a public citizen as
I
well.
understand
And
that.
I'm not here as a budget committee member either. I'm here as a citizen, and I'm very concerned. And I want to know if these people were staged. Did they?
No, they were not
They weren't
staged.
staged.
No, they
You
were not
asked them to
staged.
come here?
No. For tonight?
Yeah.
Tonight they're here for another
Were they
issue.
given any information? So they just jumped up this information on their own?
Yeah.
Yeah, 90% of work.
Mike DiPateto's pretty
Absolutely.
good at what he does, and he's been in this town a long time. I'm sure he dug it up on his own because he didn't get anything from us. Now you're accusing us of staging people. I mean, where does this end? When this
Tell me, they brought it up.
No,
They brought it up here tonight.
We did not stage anything for tonight.
Okay.
How's that?
You answered my
Okay.
question.
Actually, I'd recommend, you had mentioned at the last commission meeting about there's a massive failure in communication. You had brought that up. In the sheriff's report also brought that it was a communication issue and other issues. I think the reason this stuff keeps hashing up is because there's really not a really good substantial answer. This idea of moving forward, I have no problem with the concept. But in regards to the SRO program, which has impacted me with my child, just from the standpoint of it's given him an impression of not being able to overcome or something of that nature, false hopes and some of that nature. But maybe what you should do is maybe do a post-mortem in regards to the SRO program, this failure to launch or failure to thrive of a program. So it's, excuse me?
Not service or nothing.
Well, no, I think that they could do an internal review.
But with all due respect, the staff has done that, and that's why the change was made, and we're moving forward.
But
But we haven't invited the public to our staff meetings.
I didn't know that because the last commission meeting, Lieutenant Klein made a passionate plea to just say, let's just move forward. We're starting over.
Right, but you can't assume that we haven't had any discussions as a staff about how to do that in the program.
No.
Just because we don't come here in this forum and report the minutes of our staff
All right,
meetings.
we're going to tighten this up.
No, that's fine.
It's Mr. Roulette's 5 minutes.
Yeah, I get just a real simple one. It was-
No, I'm not saying you're at your 5 minutes. You've been interrupted.
No, it's okay. I just got one simple one. It's getting back to the laptops for the police vehicles. Are you stating that the reason for the lack of internet and dispatch connection is financial? Is that what I'm hearing tonight?
No. What you heard was waiting for the repeater that has just been installed, and my recommendation was try to look at the impact fees, because otherwise it will go to a warrant article, so it will be financial.
Okay. All right, so I just wanted to check to see if there was a financial thing. It's not.
It should be a warrant article because of the amount of money it is,
Mhm.
but if they research and find we can use impact fees, that's great, because that's what they're there
There was
for.
always a step in the process of the new communication system that, the citizens voted, what was it, $478,000 warrant article a number of years ago?
Yeah.
So in that general plan was always the idea, if we got the money, which we did, to put in the proper infrastructure here at this building and at the repeater sites, then we would be able to do that program. And as you remember, we got the money from the citizens at a town meeting. We started the program. Motorola was the company that we contracted with. September 11th happened. Motorola shut down sending out consoles or whatever to anybody, and all they did was concentrate on New York City. So there was that time frame that there was a big lag there. Then, when they finally started going into their backlog, the equipment that we had spec'd out was no longer being made, and there was another backlog. So the laptops are continuation. The main thing the laptops will do is two things for us. They also can do a report from their car and send it electronically back here. The second thing is they can run listings and stuff from the cars. But the reality, or what you may perceive, or some people may perceive, that you can't function properly, is not, without that, is not correct. It's a nice thing to have, but you don't need that to be an efficient police officer. Will it help? Sure, but it costs a lot of money. But we are moving toward that. It's going to be up to the citizens ultimately to decide, do you want to give, is the efficiency that that's going to bring about worth the dollar figure? And we don't have at this point the dollar figure yet, because we had to wait till the rest of it was done, because if the repeaters did a certain level, there may have to be repeaters in the cars, or it would affect the hardware that goes in the cars.
All right.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
This question is for Dave Gagnon as the chair of the commission. What is the criteria for being placed on the agenda?
Being placed on the
To
agenda?
get,
Like tonight, Michael DiVitetto was placed on the agenda. I'm just wondering, what is the criteria for that to happen?
You call and ask, and your name gets put on the agenda.
If you want an agenda time.
Yeah, you call and just tell Francine, ask, and you get put on the agenda.
I don't think what he had should have been on the agenda.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. I noticed that Michael DiVitetto was scheduled under appointments
No, you're right.
for what was nothing more than an extended public input.
Absolutely.
And now that that door has been opened, it's created such conflict, and you're worried about rehashing things, and by your own admission, you allowed it to happen.
I didn't allow it to
Well, it
happen.
was placed on the agenda as the chair. You certainly should have known about it.
I understand that, but usually, we have never had somebody to come in to read a statement on the agenda before, and I guess shame on me.
Can I make a
Maybe I opened
suggestion?
the door, but I don't have to leave it open either.
can I make a suggestion? If people are going to call the secretary or the department to ask to be placed on the agenda, I think perhaps, and this has been done previously, that ask the nature of what they want to come in.
You're right.
And if it's a statement, that they should be directed that their statements are going to be taken in the public.
I would find it hard to believe that they weren't asked, because how are they, what are they put under? They're put under appointments. What does that mean? There has to be some criteria. There had to be some question. Anyone can call and just ask to be put on, and they'll be placed on.
Been like that for years, yeah, because we've been open. If somebody called and said, instead of public input, whatever the issue they want to discuss will take more time than that.
Yeah, we do it on the council.
I was going to say, the council
We've been
does
doing it for, I've been on there for 8 years.
Right, but normally they have some type of an agenda or something they explain that they want to talk about.
Sometimes it can just be a presentation, it could be,
I don't think the council always knows exactly what the person's going to say.
not always, no.
Is there a time limit to it, or is it a block of time?
It occurs, no.
There's really no block of time. That's more up to the chair to
The
decide.
chair will
Why don't we
decide
just
if
make
it's
it
running too long.
a topic
Yeah,
for discussion
exactly.
amongst the committee for us to discuss, like we did with the minutes, how we were going to resolve it, discuss it, and we'll decide, and that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, except that it's already happened, and I don't think, it's not fair to anyone else now, especially me, where I'm named repeatedly in this extended public input. But anyways, this next question is for the chief. At the last commission meeting, you made a statement, Officer Defina, that you would need a letter from him, if the commission was to be allowed to see his personnel file. I'd just like to ask you what your understanding of that process
If
is.
the commission was?
Yes, you stated that at the last commission meeting.
that
Officer
again,
Defina had asked to speak in front of the commission
Right.
regarding his evaluation. There was talk of his personnel file, and you stated, I need a letter from you if the commission wants, in order for the commission to see your personnel file. And I just wanted I just wanted to understand what your understanding is and what your process is regarding to that. Do you ever let any commissioner see any employee's personnel file? Has that ever happened in your tenure here as the chief?
No.
So that the commissioners have never seen a personnel file?
Unless we get to the point of a termination or something like that, where it's brought up during a process. But normally, they don't come in and read personnel files or whatever, no, because they're the judges ultimately if somebody is, whether it's discipline coming forward or termination, just like on the hiring. So
Right, I
they
realize
can't see
that.
that
There
stuff
were
earlier.
just statements made in the past that led me to...
I think the letter was that Officer Defina wanted to discuss his evaluation. And we said, you have to, if you want to discuss your evaluation, put a request into the commission, because an evaluation review is not something that by law an employee has a right to a hearing for. So the letter was for him to put a letter in, or anybody, to say, an employee to say, I wish to speak to the commission on this. Okay, the commission can then decide, because the employee doesn't have a right to a hearing on that, whether to grant that or not. We made the request, they decided to grant it, they could have decided not to grant it. But it was to make a formal request to meet with them.
My question really had to do with personnel files, and I just wanted to get your understanding. So you don't release them to the commission, and you're saying you never have?
We normally don't, unless it's to the end where they want to see them, or something comes up during a process.
Okay.
But as a routine, no.
But it's only a termination process, correct?
Well, ultimately, they can see them if they want, but the problem is if they see them, they can choose to do that, but then they potentially take themselves. Let's just say right now...
Wait a minute, I'm confused, because you just said that they
No.
don't see them, they haven't.
They don't, but they have that option. I mean, they could order me to say, I want to see an officer's personnel file.
Would that need to be a written request?
No, they could give me a written order, and I have to give it, or I mean a verbal order.
It would have to be a written request from them for you to
No,
do that?
verbal, but once I give them that,
How does that document then?
they can just say it right here in a meeting.
Is there a procedural, is there some type of procedure in regards to that?
It's still a verbal order.
It's
Well,
still a
if
verbal
we didn't
order.
have it to sign off on it,
But how do you know the verbal order exists unless it's written?
Does it go in the
Because
file?
it's verbal. Our orders talk about verbal, an order doesn't have to be in writing. It can be verbal or in writing.
But there has to be something in the overriding statute that says the police commission has the ability in which to create verbal orders in regards to access to personnel information or information within the police department, right?
no, because a verbal order, same order that you get verbally or Pete gets verbally, doesn't have to be necessarily
As
written
long as it
down.
comes from an appropriate supervisor, it's not a
And it's
legal
not
order.
illegal.
It has to be followed.
But in that case, how does that, how do you protect privacy rights? Well, I mean, in regards to, if you don't have a procedure in which to correct, to control.
Mr. Chairman, are we devolving into an open discussion here?
No,
Yeah, it
actually,
seems that
that's,
way, but-
no, actually, it's just, I'm just asking for a point. I was unaware that.
Well, the employees all work for the commission,
Certainly.
so you have rights to their personnel file, but we have never opened their personnel file because it taints you from anything. You
From
can't,
sitting on a grievance,
you can't sit on anything.
right? And you
Or
wouldn't
you
do
can-
that.
So what good does it do you?
But I'm just saying, because if it isn't written, then how do you say it taints your grievance? I mean, there's no procedural thing.
All right.
No, well, there is.
That's fine.
We actually have we obtained a number of years ago, legal advice on the commission and how they should access personnel files.
All right, sorry, Maura.
That's all right. That actually brings up another question. Regarding legal advice you talked about earlier regarding exit interviews, is that something that you have in writing, that legal advice?
That I don't think is in writing.
And just one more comment. I would like to again reiterate my dismay with the chief's handling the SRO program, specifically the switch in the SROs. I'm glad that the commission has agreed to meet with Officer Defina tonight, as I believe this may be the commission's last chance to diffuse this issue before it's in the hands of the attorneys. And quite frankly, as a taxpayer in this town, I just can't afford the legal fees that have been incurred as a result of the mismanagement of the police department. I hope that we can see tangible results from this meeting. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Jake, I have a question. Okay. It's a question about what you guys just said about the personnel files. Can I ask that question?
I have some public input.
I know if I request to see my personnel file, I have to file it in writing, and that goes in my personnel file. So next time I go to see it, I say, oh yeah, on that day I reviewed my personnel file. If you guys ask to do the same thing, is it in there? Is there any paperwork saying who's looked at my file, who's looked at anything?
Anytime anybody looks at a file, it's signed off by who looks at the file.
So there's like that little sheet that was in there for me when I requested. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
I did one thing, I was looking at something positive. I've been talking with Lieutenant Klein, very basic, he's been very busy. My interest was in doing an exercise in crime analysis for HOSIT. I work in different areas of geospatial information systems and such. I was trying to see if I could apply some of the stuff I've learned from the Department of Justice in regards to, they have some free programs and such. I was wondering if there's anything in place which would allow me to sign like a confidentiality agreement or something of that nature to look at crime data. And specifically, I'm looking at regards to demographics. Don't need names, but I would like to understand the let's say, street location, the type of offense and stuff like that. I like to volunteer to do that, and in the end, hopefully provide a package that's free of charge from the Department of Justice. And maybe see if one of the officers might be able to utilize that, because maybe that's something that the commission could utilize in regards to understanding the crime, in hot spots within the city and such. So that's why I guess I'm asking, I'd be more than happy to work with the chief if you're going to sign you.
I'd say your contact person would be Captain Cecilio.
Okay.
Okay. As far as, what he would be able to show you is information that's available to anybody else. I don't believe, because of the right to know law, that you can sign and that we could access where you're not an employee or not otherwise entitled to certain stuff. So you would have that basic information. But I think you need to see how we gather the information to see if what we gather is going to work in what your program is. So I think you need to start at step one and talk to him and see what our system does. You may even need to talk to Captain Daigle, who manages our system, to see what we already gather, see how we gather it, what's already there, and then see how the programs you're talking about they interface with that.
That's fine. What I'd like to do is just get your permission. If Captain Cecilio is spearheaded, I will waste his time. I hate exercise of futility, and I expect this to be probably an 8-month project anyway. So what I'll try to do is put an idea of what I want to try to achieve, send it to him, at his leisure, he can get back to me. And progress slowly. The next thing is I'd like to recommend that we look at maybe some type of benchmarking and such. I looked all through the minutes, and I never see anything, tell me if I'm wrong, like a year-end report that we can access, compiled statistics. I know
in the town report.
In the town report?
Yeah.
Well, I've seen the town report, but it's very, like the number of calls are...
Right, it's very basic. Internally, we have those numbers.
Yeah. So I guess the question is there an opportunity there maybe that after I do this crime map, we can look at maybe, improving that?
Well, to be honest with you, we stopped a number of years ago, many years ago when I was an officer here. The commission used to get monthly reports on how many rolls of film we had, how many of all kinds of things. No, but I mean, but that also included, how many accidents and all that. And and a number of commissions ago, since I've been here, decided that it wasn't worth the staff's time to come up with a report this big that really didn't mean much to these people sitting up here for the decisions they had to make. That information stay internally within the department. So we now don't spend a lot of staff time pulling out anything that we don't need. If a certain division needs it, it's there in the computer and we pull it out. But we don't pull it out for public dissemination any more than we have to now because of the time and paper and everything it takes to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's probably correct. Back a few years, it's probably probably hard to do.
Can you wind it up?
So, yeah, absolutely. One of the things I just provide is this is a benchmark city survey. You can go to this. Actually, I've talked to this gentleman here. He runs a particular program. These are just examples of some of the analysis. Benchmark is a group of police departments that basically compile their information together. It's actually quite extensive, and it actually gives you some pretty good idea of how to. And those are bigger departments, as you can see the manpower aspects on it. But it's interesting. The statistics on there would be really nice to. If we could do something on a smaller scale in the future. I'm not saying right now, but in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
David Curl, 79 Main Street. First of all, I'd like to say it is my name that's on Hudson Issues, and I can turn it off tomorrow if I wanted to. I will not discuss it here because I think it's irrelevant, and I would not waste your time discussing matters here that you do not have any governance over. When I see members of the public come and spend your time and our time to criticize what people are talking about, I found that a waste of this commission's time. I'm a little insulted when we see eyes rolling and hands going up about rehashing. These are issues that have been brought up here that we're trying to get answers for. On the 1-month meeting basis, it's very difficult. We might be talking about something that happened 3 months ago, but it's really only 2 meetings ago. So I would rather that you have the patience to entertain our questions and comments about real issues like SRO, how the meetings are conducted, policy, than to spend our time listening to one citizen complain about another citizen, writing something or saying something about him, because I personally find that just a waste of time, and I'll waste no further time with it than that. When we were talking about, just before you instigated the report by the Sheriff's Department, you held up the memo from us, which was the 4th draft of the DeFina memo in response to Maura Olet's letter in the banner. And at that point, you said, we're going to find out who's lying. somebody's lying here, and we're going to find out. We're going to have an investigation. And it's my understanding that the scope of that investigation didn't include that memo. That's my first question. And if it did we determine what happened with that memo?
I don't know how to answer that right now.
What I can do is, and I don't have it with me tonight, is I have I have the original letter that was sent to the sheriff's department with what they were asked to do. I can bring that to the next meeting.
Well, I'm sure you've reviewed the report.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
I haven't. I suppose I could write to them and get it. I don't know where it is, but my question is, in reviewing the report, does the report answer that question?
I do not believe on the specific memo. I could be mistaken.
Well, then
I have a copy of that report, and I will check it out.
My question would be then, shouldn't we follow up on that to answer that question? Because your own words when you were holding that memo up was, we're going to find out. We waited. I waited. I got no further questions about it because I thought that there was a process in place that was going to find that answer. And to my knowledge, it hasn't been answered. Obviously, it's an important question to you because you're the one that stated we were going to find out about it. Can we have follow-up on that? Can we find out what happened to that memo?
Absolutely. Give me the original letter,
Thank you.
and just in case I can't find it, give me a copy of the report, please.
As I was about to say at the end of the first public input, I'm still curious about the meeting of minutes of March 13th. In reviewing the videotape, I did not see a vote to amend them, but I thought you spoke to Francine and said fix them or something to that nature. Does that mean that these minutes, if it's in the works, I'm not going to bring it up and go over it, but I checked the website and last night, and the minutes have not been altered from the original. And I didn't see you approve any changes tonight.
These March 17th?
Yeah, those are the ones I was addressing with you prior.
So it's in the works. Yeah, it's in the works. Still being worked on. I have a copy of it here.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yes, I have one other question. Well, I have a very basic question. I would ask the chief. Chief, do you feel that the morale of the police department, how would you describe the morale of the police department?
From what I've heard right now, it's not very good.
Well, I would say from your perspective as chief, not from the public point of view. I'm saying as the chief's point of view, you're saying not very good?
Yes.
Thank you.
Has this been posted with these? Is this the way it's posted on the website? Mr. Pearl, could you refresh my memory on March 17th minutes? Just so I don't be going forward.
The issue was that the March 17 minutes state that the meeting lasted for 2 minutes. We provided you with the audio tape, which was 5 minutes and 38 seconds.
Right, and I'm looking at what I'm being told is the minutes on the website, and it's showing more than 2 minutes. It shows calling the meeting to order at 5:30, and ending the meeting at 5:34, then going back into public input after that. At 5:34, the commission re-entered public session, and then closing out at 5:49 to go into non-public. So, I guess it's still, this is supposedly what's on the website, that's more than 2 minutes.
Well, I'll have to take another look. And are those approved minutes now? Have you approved the changes?
I just got this, and I'm asking you, is this what's on the website as an approved?
Well, I don't want to nitpick, but
Yeah, you're
4
right.
minutes is not great. It's 5.5.
Well, you know what? You got 4 minutes. That's what she came up with. Do you have anything else? You want to see them?
the works, and we'll address it.
Well, I wish you would, because it's your own audio tape. This is not my recount of it. I'm not talking about anybody's watch. That's the length of the tape. And, it's a simple thing. I feel insulted that eyes are rolled at me for bringing this up, when it's your error, which I have brought up.
Eyes aren't rolling at you, but I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning. That's why my eyes are rolling.
You are also interrupting me. I was trying to make a statement that I feel insulted when eyes are rolled at me when I'm bringing up your own error, and I have to bring it up month after month. And it's looked at me as like I'm making it up.
Why
And
don't
I'm
we just
not.
put it as an item on the agenda for next month? Yeah. Just put it on as an item.
Any other public input?
New business is fine. I was putting other business as things that came up from the commissioner.
Okay, just a few more follow-ups then.
I don't
From
mean to be
Article 40 to Main
patient.
Street, I'm sorry. I saw one other correction to be made in your minutes, and I didn't hear it at the beginning, and I think it's a very important change. It's on page 6, if you want to look at the meeting on July 21st, and I did raise my hand in the meeting. And it totally changed the tone of the statement. That's why I just want one word needs to be changed. On the top of page 6, where it says Commissioner Roy commented that in reading the attorney's opinion, she stated that the commission had no legal obligation to accept written statements or documents. The word should be accept, A-C-C-P-T.
What page is that?
Page 6.
6.
Is that what I see in my minutes?
No.
What word do you have there in your minutes? Because what I have here is legal obligation
Well, I don't
to
even have
accept.
the same. I'm
Oh,
not
you don't?
You know what happens when you print them out? I don't know if you're aware of that. If you print them out.
Oh, you know, the way I printed it out, it came with page 6. I don't know. Oh, it's just before citizens' documents submittal continue.
Page 5.
Okay.
Page 5.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's under new business, citizens' documents submittal. I'm sorry.
Page 5 on the version.
I printed it. That was page 6.
Yeah, no.
That's what happens when you print them out.
Okay, you're right.
Yeah, Commissioners, go to page 5.
Yeah.
Page 5, where it says has no legal
To
obligation
accept,
to
you're right. I
accept.
didn't pick up on
That's
that.
a totally different tone there. Okay, and I just want to clarify that if you could, please. Thank you. And yeah, just getting the record straight. Thank you. Just a few minutes ago, I want to get another clarification, just one more time, on whether commissioners read personnel files. It was my understanding and my recollection at the Defini hearings in April that on the first night, Commissioner Roy asked the attorneys if it was okay if Officer Defini's previous personal files can be read and included as part of the judgments to this current hearing. And you decided all of that, and the determination was no, that personnel file could not be read. It's my understanding. I don't want to paraphrase Jay. Okay? But one of the first things I was trying to clarify, and he started the conversations on that first Monday night, and he had asked the attorneys, can his personal file be used in consideration for these hearings? So what I'm hearing now tonight, since they don't even read personnel files, why would he ask that question if he had not read the personnel files? I'm just throwing it out there.
The two aren't connected.
The two aren't.
No, because
He wanted to use his previous records.
That doesn't mean they would have read them.
He could have read them if they said it was okay to do that. Then he could go back and read them. I think that's why he was asking.
Is that your understanding of it, sir? I just want to clarify.
I have not looked at anybody's personnel files since
Thank you
I've
for
been on this
clarifying.
commission.
I just want to clarify that.
Anybody's. I've been here 3 years.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that point because there's something to be a discrepancy here. I just want to make sure we're on the record for stating so. All right? Thank you very much. On a lighter note, and I don't know if I'm the last public input or not, I would like to know, I see all this new equipment here, and I know we spent a lot of money on it, $5,000 or whatever. If you could perhaps define and describe what this new equipment is going to do for this?
This stuff here? Yeah, what we did is we put in...
For everybody here, what's it going to do and how does it function?
Well, it's going to do what we talked about earlier. It is going to record video and audio of the meetings, these meetings, or any other use of this room, if, say, for training or whatever, and will be recorded on, I guess, DVD or whatever it is. And so we will have what we talked about earlier, which is a record of the meetings or anything else that any group uses this room that wants to record it on. So you will still have it's the same, similar as bringing a camera, except that it will
So it'll be now videoed and audioed.
Yes, and you will still have, for instance, you will still have her minutes, which are done, again, abbreviated, but there will be the backup, if you will, of audio and video.
Terrific. So we get everything on official record, which is I'm totally in favor of. Now, I see other cameras here. There's multiple cameras here.
One over there, one over there.
So one points this way, one points that way, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Are they simultaneously, or does somebody
Yes.
run the cameras?
No,
Okay.
no.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Will those DVDs be permanent record?
Any other public input?
Just like tapes.
Seeing none, make a motion to go into non-public.